Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for
Hello.
joining me this today, actually. Thank you for joining me. So, to everyone who will be watching this, I'm joined today by Chibogu Obinwa, and we are going to be talking a lot about sustainable development in sub-Saharan Africa, and particularly in the area of gender equality, SDG 5 to be very precise, because that's where she handles very well. That's the area in which she works. So just to get started, I would just invite you to tell us about yourself, what you do, and just introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you, Paradise, for having me. It's a pleasure. My name is Chibogu Obinwa. I'm a gender and social inclusion development specialist, a women's human rights activist for over 25 years. Um, I don't know where else to start from. I like to, of course, give credit to my parents. So, yes, born to Dr. George Obiese Obinwa. My dad was a consultant anesthesiologist, and my mom, Clara Obinwa. Both of them, I miss them because they both passed on. My mom was a medical radiographer, and I was born in a relatively middle class family, happy bonding. I have three siblings, so we're four in number. So let's go to my work. Yeah, so I've been a women's human rights activist for over 25 years now, and I don't intend to stop anytime soon because as we speak, women are still facing discrimination. Girls are still not going to, many girls are still not going to school in certain communities across the global south. Women are still being subjected to sexual and gender-based violence. Uh, Economic empowerment has always been more like a challenge for women, due to so many factors. And so, yes, so my work continues. My advocacy for the promotion of the rights of women and girls continues. So that's basically just in summary my background.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. When we talk about development in sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of people don't understand the extent in which lack of equality, contributes to the challenges we have. In a place like Nigeria, for instance, where Africa in general, though, it's estimated that the population of women outweighs that of men. That's like half of the population being sidelined. Imagine what we can do actually if everybody is brought, to speed. But I just want to ask, as an African and having worked in the development sector in Africa, what does sustainable development mean to you?
Um, I think that whenever we want to talk about sustainable development, we would need to do a little bit of, throwback. How did we get here? We initially had Millennium Development Goals. And of course, a lot of countries set targets that they wanted to meet in terms of development. And of course, part of those targets had to do with women's empowerment and, gender equality and eradication of poverty as well. But in between, of course, we've had, what I'll call maybe unforeseen events. We've also had conflict here and there and some other challenges, sleeping, in between the target years. And in addition to the fact that, of course, most most countries weren't really walking the talk in terms of actualizing the Millennium Development Goals. And they also realized that there was need to set, to take it a notch higher, to come up with sustainable development goals. It's one thing to have a set of goals, but it's another thing to have goals that are sustainable. So I think that's basically what led the UN to come up with the 17 sustainable goals in, I think, 2015.
Yeah.
It might. Okay. So for me, the word sustainable is very key in the sense that you don't want to just, have a one-off policy or law or, some form of institution or structure that will go away in 5 years or 10 years. You want something that would outlive generations. You
Yeah.
want a system that generations coming up, would only add value to it, and not that they will come, and start all over again. You want something sustainable, something also that you can pass down from generation to generation. And so I think that sustainable development goals, is a set of what I would call significant policy direction for states, to put into action and ensure that those 17 goals, are not only actualized, but that they become the reality within the systems of the countries that have endorsed those goals. And in particular, for me, of course, I'm concerned about all the goals. They're all linked. But Sustainable Goal 16, which talks about peace and justice for all, as well as strong institutions, matter a lot, as well as Sustainable Development Goal 5, which talks about gender equality and empowerment for women and girls. And
Yeah.
of course, both of them are, interrelated.
I agree because I mean, without strong institutions, laws will not even be upheld, policies will not be made. And I think that is where a lot of African countries are still, that is what they are still struggling with
Absolutely.
because outside Africa, there are a lot of other countries have come to a place where they have structure and institutions to, ensure that these other goals are met. But being that we do not have that structure or institutional strength, yet we tend to just scratch the surface. When this is my opinion, though, when it comes to
I agree. Absolutely.
yeah, these other goals. Yeah, and when you were speaking, you talked about countries realizing that there's need to like go a bit higher and then coming up with a sustainable development goal. I just want to know in general, being that most of your works are in Nigeria, I might correct I believe that's correct. Most of your
Nigeria
work,
and elsewhere. I've done work in Nigeria. I've also done work elsewhere, but largely in Nigeria. That's my
yeah, is
constituency.
largely, yes, in Nigeria.
Yeah.
What do you think? How do you think Nigeria has how has Nigeria, let me frame it this way, how has Nigeria, done in attaining gender equality and here, like attaining gender equality? Yes, I think that's the question. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very big question, if for want of a better way to put it, but it's a very valid question. Um, the journey is still far. I know that Nigeria has been able to adopt some laws and policies towards the promotion of the rights of women. And, just to be specific, Nigeria ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1985, which was commendable. A
Yeah.
number of states have ratified. It's the United Nations Convention. And why I am citing CEDAW, I mean, that's for in the abbreviation, is that CEDAW is a comprehensive United Nations convention that specifically addresses the human rights of women and also, um, comprehensively defines the word discrimination.
Yeah.
And Nigeria ratified without reservations in 1985. And of course, subsequently, there are other laws. And the question is, how far has Nigeria gone in domesticating CEDAW into our local laws. And that has been a long journey. And a lot of women's rights activists and social justice advocates have pushed for laws to be enacted, even if not domesticating CEDAW as a whole as it is,
Yeah.
but adopting laws that actually encompass the principles within the CEDAW Convention, which Nigeria has ratified without reservations. And so far, there are laws here and there, and I'll just cite a few examples. Because also we have a federal system of government, some states have also enacted certain laws in their respective states. I know Enugu State has a law against maltreatment of widows or widowers, because it's generally both for men and women, but we know that most times women are more disproportionately affected. Lagos State has a domestic violence law, a very comprehensive one. I think that was in 2017. And Nigeria has a national gender policy. It was a national women's policy or women policy, but now it's a national gender policy. And then I wouldn't say the latest, but one of the most comprehensive laws that, an act of the National Assembly is the VAP Act, which is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Bill, which is a very comprehensive act prohibiting violence against all persons. And I'm going to just pause a little bit and just give some background or backstory, if you like, to this law, because initially it was introduced as the Violence Against Women Bill. But, it went through some form of setback, and there was a lot of back and forth, in terms during the advocacy journey, the women's rights advocates with the, members of the National Assembly, and some of their concerns included the fact that, violence affects everybody. So why is it violence against women bill? This bill was introduced because of the statistics, the scary, statistics of, violence against women and girls in Nigeria. They are more disproportionately affected. We can't deny that. Fair enough, fair argument. And so back and forth, to cut a long story short, finally, of course, it was reviewed, revised with a lot of consultations, and then it became the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. So one of the, I would say, progressive things about the act is that, apart from the fact that it actually articulates clearly different aspects of violence, it also has provisions for compensation, for victims. Excuse me.
Thank you.
So the VAP Act of 2015 is quite, I would say, a very significant law. And so far, I think almost all the states have domesticated the act in their respective states, which again, I think it's progressive. But one thing is to domesticate, another thing is to gazette and actually make it really, really functional, that people can use that and say, yes, we have this law. And also to raise awareness. Of course, there's been a lot of awareness on the side of, women's rights activists or, civil society organizations, enlightening people that this VAP Act is this and all that, but there's a lot that needs to be done on the government side as well. Because it also took a lot to get them to domesticate that law. Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to government, in government taking up their place in development sphere in Africa, it can be very challenging, because a lot of people who are in power, we know how it is with leaders in Nigeria and Africa in general. I have a personal experience when we started the literacy project in Ebonyi State. I think it was 2021. No, it was shortly after I traveled. So we sent a letter to the Ministry of Education. I mean, this has nothing to do with gender equality, but it's just the kind of setbacks people suffer working in the field and contributing to development in Africa. So we sent a letter to the Ministry of Education about that project. And it was just to like make them aware of it and see if we can collaborate, in some way to improve the work we do in that community, because we met a very huge obstacle in the field.
Obstacles.
And this letter was written with a letter-headed paper, properly signed with contacts on the letter. And then I actually submitted that letter before I traveled, but I kept going for feedback. I never got a feedback. So when I left, our CEO continued with chasing up the letter. And then the then Commissioner for Education in Ebonyi State eventually saw the letter, and he had an option of saying no or yes, either way, responding through the proper channel. So he picks up his phone and he calls a program officer then, whose contact was also on the letter. And he began to rant. I don't want to see you in my school. I don't want, he, you know, the program officer recorded the call and sent to me, and I just didn't know how to react to it. This is someone, and this was a school where we had 120 children in one class, squeezed into a classroom, and one teacher was manning that classroom. They didn't have desk, potholes. Children were paying 50 naira every day to buy chalk. So this was just like the few set of students we've encountered. And we had donated desks to these children, provided materials. We're going in there to teach, to support the children.
To support.
And we were just reaching out first to officially let the government know that this is happening, just in case of any challenges or any eventualities. And that was his reaction. He never even followed up. He doesn't care about the children. And that is how it is, you know. So I've had people, other young people I know that are like, I know one person that is really pushing for gender equality and women inclusion in Ebonyi State. She had this short video she did with US, I think it was Obama
Foundation?
Yali Africa. It was an extension of Yali Africa program.
Program.
That is sponsored for her, and she did that thing. She had a very similar experience as well with, I think it was which other commissioner in the state. So these are like challenges. And what you mentioned about them really bringing it home, you still see issues where cases are reported and it's not followed up. And
exactly. There's no political will by those in office, those who are, who are supposed to actually push for those laws and policies to become a reality for people. Lack of political will, lack of commitment. Basically that's it. Yeah.
I agree completely. Now I don't know how it is in your field with gender inclusion and women's rights in Africa, but with education, which is where I know more, which is where I have more experience, I've always thought that projects should be like, it's what I think though. I know projects are carried out in certain ways where we may come out and just focus on an aspect, get it completed, and we move on. But being that Africa's problem is truly wicked and quite connected to each other, I've always thought that it's to make more impact, we'll probably need to take one community at a time. Now, not just solving an aspect of the issue. I just want to know what you think about transdisciplinarity and how you think we can include this, in community development in places like Nigeria, to be precise. And by this, I just mean, what do you think about a scenario where one project or people collaborate to, as they're looking into gender inclusion, they're looking into what could be causing lack of gender inclusion or what could be causing these challenges. It's just like, for instance, we had a scenario where we were looking at out of school children, only to realize that the main issue was actually poverty. The parents understood that those children were meant to be in school.
Yeah.
But the issue was actually poverty. So if we had gone in, or if we go in and do a campaign and get the children to enroll, it will be a matter of time till before they drop out again. Because
Exactly.
why they are dropping out is because there is poverty and hunger, and they need to contribute to the house issues. So I know these things are linked. What do you think about changing the way projects are done in Africa, to go beyond just an aspect or just one SDG, and see if it is possible to include all in one project and collaborate with multiple organizations? And I don't know, it's just how it comes to my mind, but I don't know what you think of that concept or idea in terms of community development.
So I'm going to use one scenario, and that's a very valid concern. The fact that sometimes when we think we're solving an aspect of development, we are overlooking what I would call the root cause of that particular challenge. And, if you don't, it's almost like saying you're dealing with a symptom of a particular medical situation, and you're not dealing with the root cause. Yeah. So you deal with the symptom, it will come back again because the root cause is still there. In development, is almost like the same thing, right? So if you go into a community, and I think some of the, one of the mistakes that some people, make, with all good intentions, is to make assumptions of what they think that the community needs. So if you go into a community, you feel that, okay, lack of education is a problem. And it could be. It doesn't mean that it's not. But then, like you said, you need to do in-depth, analysis, and, you have to assess the situation. You have to engage the community. That's where it's important that whatever project you're going into a community to do, you have to engage the community. You have to strategize, design your program in such a way that from start to finish, the community voices are heard. They are included. Yeah. So I call it, development of inclusion, in the sense that you can't bring development and just hand over to a community. You have to understand the community, the nuances in the community, the underlying cultural factors. For instance, if it's in the area of women and girls disempowerment, there are underlying causes. It could be lack of mobility in certain cultural settings where women and girls are not allowed to, to move around and all that. In terms of school, there could be other reasons and all that. And I'm going to use a particular matrix. An equality matrix that see the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, CEDAW, that I spoke about, the United Nations Convention, designed, which is something that will address this. It's like a tool. It's like a simplified tool. And the matrix, it's, like a pyramid like this. You have equality, then you have access. Sorry, you have equal opportunities as part of the matrix. And the next one is equal access to opportunities. And then equal results. So in that sense, if you have a project in the community, for instance, let's say you want to bring about maybe you want to address lack of girl child education, or why girls are not doing well at a certain level of education. And then, maybe you feel that, okay, maybe there are not enough schools, or maybe they don't have access. There are schools that, some schools are not, they're not close to schools. There's lack of proximity or convenience, if you like. And then maybe you build more schools, and then you say, oh, fine. Now you have, for instance, you have enough schools for boys, you have enough schools for girls, and you've kind of leveled the playing field. Now, in some cultural settings, girls are withdrawn from school for early marriage purposes and all that. And then, because you believe you've already kind of leveled the playing field in terms of equal access to education, or rather equal opportunity for education, or to education, right? However, your work has not ended, because you need to address that particular issue of withdrawing girls at a particular time in school for marriage purposes.
Yeah.
Because when you withdraw the girls, it means that there will not be equality of results. Because at that point, while you've addressed the issue of equal opportunities and equal access to opportunities, which is that you now have girls and boys, accessing education. At some point, the boys are going to go further, because they're not going to be withdrawn for marriage purposes, and the girls have been withdrawn.
Yes.
And then there's the gap.
Yeah.
So this is just one example. Another example is, for instance, if you want to address maybe women's economic empowerment through maybe some microfinance institution. Maybe you want to give, you want to encourage them to give loans, soft loans to women and all that. And then, fair enough, great. So you've provided that opportunity, right? And then the women go to assess the loan. And within the institutional policies, they have a particular policy that says that for you to access a loan, you would have to provide XYZ. And one of the XYZ could be, you have to show that you have a landed property. You have to get a kind of guarantor, a male guarantor. Most times it's a male guarantor or something like that. So in that way, you find out that women, because of cultural factors, they don't have they don't have the same level of access to landed properties the way men do. In some cultural settings, women don't even inherit landed property or family land property and all that. So you see, in that way already, you are eliminating the chances of women accessing that loan. So you have addressed, opportunity to the loan. Of course, you've provided that. But in between, there's an obstacle.
Yeah.
And it's that obstacle that is where sometimes policymakers fail. Because they will say, oh, we've done this. Oh, yes. Women's economic empowerment, or girls' education, of course. We've built schools here. We've done this, that, and that. But you're not having deep conversations within the community. You're not meeting you're not having, for instance, the needed dialogue with community leaders. Why are girls being withdrawn from school for early marriages? Why are certain things not happening in the community? Why are girls being, given responsibility to fetch water, for a long distance before they're able to go to school, or do certain chores when they're supposed to actually be in the classroom? They're not addressing some of those obstacles.
Yeah.
So that's why development has to be holistic. You have to look at, the root causes of certain impediments that women and girls are facing, in the communities, before you're able to address it effectively. And that's also where sustainability comes in.
Yeah.
Because if you address the root causes, automatically your also providing a systemic approach to development, a system where it becomes part and parcel of that particular community.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, this was like really clear and explanatory, and just imagine if more people can just take on it and follow through. And like you mentioned, policy is really is a huge one. It's a huge blow on development in Africa. All right. I thank you very much, actually. Like it's been like really nice getting to I know I've heard of SIDO, but I've not like I didn't know it in details as you took your time to explain it today. And I'm sure that people who don't even have access to the document will pick one or two things, especially young people, because all over Africa now there are lots of young people trying to do something from I know it's coming from a place of hunger and just seeing things fall apart around them and wanting to contribute and genuinely not knowing how and where to even start from. So I'm sure someone will see this and definitely pick something. Oh, I have picked something, so they will definitely pick one or two things.
That would be awesome.
Help them in their journey.
That would be awesome. Well, we keep learning. We keep learning. And we have to use all the tools available to us. All the legal
agree.
works and all. Yeah.
I agree.